So I get up this morning and I go outside to make a snowman. No snow. And I'm
You need to
thinking,
come to my house.
I should be at Dewey's house, because if I woke up at Dewey's house, I could go outside and make a snowman.
That is so true.
Oh, man. You know, but there's a little tiny part of me that would like to actually do it. It's very small, though.
Little tiny itty bitty part.
I was 72 yesterday, sir. And someone said to me, I said something about it being like 80 a couple of weeks ago. And she writes back, she says, "Did you not grow up where there was any weather?" Yeah, beautiful weather all the time.
Yeah, 80 degrees.
Good morning, sir. He's Dewey Freeman. I'm Mark Sylvester. We
Good
are the
morning.
Elder Council. I've been thinking at length about, I talk about the show to people, and I talk about, it's talking to men at 25 and 30 and 35 and 40 and 45 about the big things in life we don't talk about all the time, like how to be a better son, how to be a better dad, how to be a better husband, how to be a better boss, how to be a better employee, all how to be a better friend, how to be a better citizen, all of those kinds of things. And I've been thinking about the foundational pieces to pay attention to. Right? Like the really important ones at the bottom. And of course, those splinter out into lots of different hard skills and soft skills and emotional intelligence and all of these, all the different things that will be really good things to develop. But there's one that I don't know that it's a thing you develop, but if you lose it, life is awful. And it is trust. And I've been in thinking about that. Here's the question. When you meet someone brand new for the first time, because we talk about in storytelling, and if I'm telling a story in front of an audience, I want to build a know, like, and trust factor right off the bat. They don't know me. If I tell a story that's meaningful and vulnerable, they're going to trust me right off the bat. So when you meet someone new, do you think that trust is at 100 and you only lose it? Or is it trust at 0 and you only build it?
Oh, that's a good question. Are you open to a door C?
Of course.
For me, there's actually a couple of things. One is the actual energetic feeling I get with that person. So that's one piece.
Yeah. Okay. Fair.
The other piece is the first minute of my interaction with that person drives a lot. Drives whether I create an opening or whether I'm cautious with creating an opening or whether I go, no, I don't think so. Then my process is a process of being open to creating a relational trust with another person. So when it's not that I walk in and trust is at 0 or trust is at 100. That's probably more like around 50-ish if I'm putting it on that kind of a scale. But it's like, oh, can I create an opening for us to build a relationship and build trust?
So you're in that first few moments, you're neutral. Let's say at 50, you're neutral.
Okay.
And you're trying to see if I got this right. you're part of what you're doing, if it's, I mean, if it's the grocer, I guess it doesn't matter, but I guess it matters with everyone. But you're you're looking to see what's the potential, what's the trust potential here with this person. And that's a feeling, you say.
Yeah, that's a feeling. And I'm thinking of actually two different situations. One is a situation with, actually, not just name him, Dave Boyd, who I had heard about, and Graver and I had spoken about him. And on the first phone call, that I had with him, he was actually driving somewhere down in the Southeast. Within 20 minutes, it was like, I knew I could trust this man. And one is because of his openness. But one of the things he said at the end of the call when we were wrapping up, he literally said, I mean, he only knew me 20 minutes. I only knew him 20 minutes. And it was a phone call knowing, it wasn't in person knowing, but one of the things he said is, what can I do to be helpful to you, Dewey? Mm-hmm. And I had asked him, actually not that succinctly or that clearly, but it was like, here's a man that the doors went just wide open. It was like, okay, this is going to do nothing but get better and build and connect with each other, which is exactly what has happened. There's another situation where I was in a big group meeting and someone walked in late, and his statement was, and the meeting was already going, and he introduced himself and he said something like, I can read all of you and tell all of you what you're feeling and what's going on with you. And it was like, okay.
Those red flags couldn't go up fast enough.
Yeah. And it was like, okay, I'm done. And that took a minute or less. And so a lot of it has to do with that very first interaction and what happens relationally between me and another person.
I wonder if that goes back to that deep part of our brain that has been developed over thousands of years of, maybe it triggers a fight or flight thing, or what's a fight, flight, or what's the third one? I always forget it. Or freeze, or is it, I mean, is it something where when a new thing comes onto our radar, we're got to figure out friend or foe? There you go, friend or foe. And friend is, my trust thing is going to go up, and either things are going to continue to contribute to, yes, that was the correct assessment, and they are a friend, and it builds over time until you have a lifetime of trust, and that we'll get to a little bit later, that what depletes the trust, or it's a foe, and it's like, well, my shields are up, and now how thick that shield has to be, or how do I need to actually exit the situation because I don't trust them at all? Is that deep of a response in us? And the reason I ask that question is about trusting that intuition. So our body knows, even if our conscious isn't really sure, our subconscious is saying, hey, get the F out of here.
Mm-hmm. Actually, you're right. You open to me just explaining the neurological process.
Apparently, that's why we do this show. Don't mean to be a dick, but yes, I do. I do.
So
exactly.
You can trust me to nerd out on a few things. Is that what you're telling me?
That is your role on the show, Doctor.
I
We
love it.
want to learn about these things. My job is to ask the questions, and then you
And my
give us
job is
the
to make
answer.
up some answer.
Sure. Convincingly, though.
We have a process which is primarily in our lower gut. It's from our diaphragm down between
Huh?
it's called the respiratory diaphragm, which is right at the bottom of our lungs down to our pelvis. And to geek out, it's called our dorsal vagal. But what really is going on is there's a process called neuroception. And neuroception comes from our gut. Interestingly, it doesn't necessarily come from our brain. And that part of us is solely for the purpose of perceiving safety or threat.
Hmm.
And um, and then that signal does go up to our brainstem, which is the oldest part of our brain. And some people call it the reptilian brain. It's actually very similar to a reptile's brain. If you would dissect an alligator or crocodile, that's what our brainstem and their brain. They have a little more than just a brainstem, but they're primarily the same. Not exactly. So don't walk away from this going, Dewey said, it's exactly the same, but it's very similar. And it is to perceive threat or safety. And that happens in literally a millisecond. That is there. It's not a thought process. It is not a choice. It's none of those things. It happens so quickly that it's just there. And we can, after it happens, we actually do have the ability to do some processing with it. But it happens so fast that it's not a thought process. So again, going back, and actually just the same thing happened with you. I mean, you and Dave were very similar. It was like, oh, here are two men that it's like, yeah, I can trust these dudes. It's like, and then, I mean, my relationship with you and my relationship with Dave, it's different, but both are fantastic. And then we just build on that. What does happen, interestingly enough, when there's safety, is that and that trust builds. We anticipate safety with the other person, and that's what I would say trust is the anticipation of safety.
I mean, I give me an example.
Well, an example is, I mean, I'll give it. This happened this morning. I'm up with my horses feeding. It's actually relatively warm here. It's 35 degrees. Horses are calm, and I mean, it's a beautiful morning. And I was thinking about our talk this morning, and my anticipation, my excitement was, oh, I'm going to get to hang with Mark.
Mm.
And there's no part of me that thinks that that's going to be bad. Mm. It's like, and because, and it's not. I mean, it's like we get to laugh, we get to joke, we get to play around, we tease each other, we get serious, we fully connect. So it's like it's an anticipatory process of going, yeah, this is going to be good. This is going to be really good. And so what that can do is it lets my neuroceptive system rest. It's like, I don't have to come in and go, every time Mark and I talk, I better figure out whether it's safe or threatening. It's like, know every time we talk, I can anticipate and I can trust that it's going to be good, even if there's something difficult that we need to talk about. And we've talked about many
We've talked about it all.
difficult things in our lives, and so that anticipatory safety is and I actually, just so everybody knows, I'm sort of coming to this as I'm talking right now. I'm sort of making shit up, but if right this minute someone would say, "What's trust?" It's like the anticipatory safety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I took that note, and I was thinking that when you said this, our body sends a signal in a millisecond, so we know when they
Yeah.
people will say the old saying, you can't judge a book by its cover, which is kind of going towards this. Can you trust that signal? Like they're saying, hey, maybe don't trust the signal because the signal might be wrong. Don't trust that initial thing. You can't judge it by its cover, that first thing. I'm suggesting, and I think we're suggesting, that our body knows, right? And we may be off a little bit, but our shields will be ready to go up, right?
Mm-hmm.
My shields are ready, or I absolutely know. The question I
At
have
some
in
point, I
this,
want to wrap back around to that, but please go.
well, so I'm thinking that if you don't trust yourself, let's say you don't trust your judgment, or you say, gosh, I'm bad with men, or I'm not very good, I don't pick good friends, or I don't make good decisions, or that's a story you've told yourself that you don't trust yourself. Then when you get that signal, and if you have a lack of trust in your own self, then you're not going to listen to that.
1,000%. 1,000%. So I believe we've spoken about this before. Do you remember us talking about Gavin de Becker?
Yeah.
And the gift of fear. So if anyone's not read that book, please read it. It's an amazing book. That book is primarily about people. Gavin de Becker runs a personal protection agency. Maybe that's he trains bodyguards for people,
right?
Which is essentially what he does. And but when he also does investigations. With every person that he interviewed, there was that had been assaulted, that had been, some people were even killed. He obviously didn't interview the dead people, but he interviewed people who knew the dead people. Every person 100% said, I knew something was wrong. And he interviewed a number who actually listened to themselves. But I knew something was wrong, and I didn't listen to it. And many times we'll get more than one signal that something's wrong. And so not listening to what our bodies say is exactly what you're talking about around not trusting ourselves, not trusting the signals that our bodies are giving us.
Which makes me question or wonder about self-awareness. So if you're self-aware, you're going to know that, and you go, oh, I'm doing it again, right? That might be like, oh, I'm doing it again, and then take steps to say, okay, hey, nope, I'm going to tap out of this thing. I can't, whatever that is, job, relationship, chance encounter, whatever the thing is, you're just like, yeah, no, I've learned. That presupposes a level of self-awareness that you could actually do that. How would you coach someone, or can't counsel is a better word?
No, either way.
To like if someone who's listening to this right now, like we're calling them on it. Like
Yeah.
if this is ringing a bell for you, and you're going, oh man, you busted, right? Like, yeah, yeah, I'm guilty of that. I'm gonna guess in just my own experience, it's really hard to get out of some things where you're getting that. Now, I'm not 5 alarm, oh my God, I gotta go, but it's like, no, it's not right. What are the things that are there a couple of things that cause people to stay, even though their body's going, get the fuck out of here?
Um, well, first of all, that's a multi-layered answer to that question.
I was just thinking, I'm thinking of we have done a lot of work with the domestic violence solutions people here in town. And someone who is being battered, for instance, that's a terrible, but there were signs really early, probably, right? And that's what I'm suggesting. What are if we're not in the habit of listening to ourselves, how could we get into the habit? Maybe that's a different question.
Yeah. So let me address the first part a little bit. Um, we very, very early on in our lives go through, and this begins in utero and it's the first few years of life, go through a process of attaching. That's a gigantic, diving into that's a gigantic.
It's your life's work.
Yeah, but it's a gigantic explain.
Yeah.
And what it really means is that we learn very early on about learning to trust somebody who is primarily our mother, and just right next to that is our father. So there's a thing where it's like, oh, it's only our mothers. Well, it's like it's our mother's 100% and our father's 99.9%. The difference is that we are literally inside our mother's body. So that does change things relationally. When we attach well, we learn two things. One is that we can attach, and two is that we can be authentic. Because being authentic and is part of attachment. So say in our relationship, and I'm going to wrap back around to this. Both of us can be and have been 100% authentic. There's nothing that I've not ever, if I've had anything to say to you about anything, I say it. And I believe that that's the case for you.
Yes.
If there's ever been something that's like, well, I don't know about that or this, we say that. If there's something we're excited about, we say that. We get to be authentic and attached. If early on, what we have to do, depending on our situation, if we have to give up authenticity to be able to attach, then what will happen is later on in life, when we get into bad situations like domestic violence, even though it's horrible, we give up our authentic feelings and our authentic process to be able to try to attach. Interestingly enough, it's only a pseudo attachment because you can't attach unless you're authentic. But many times we get put in a double bind where we have to make a choice of being authentic or stay attached. And that's really, really scary for some people, especially if early on they got the messages that they're not allowed to be authentic.
Mm.
Some really basic examples of that is a little boy falling and skin, they fall and they cut their knee open or they hurt their leg or something and they're crying and somebody says, that didn't hurt. Just get up and get through it. Stop crying. Don't be a sissy. Or if somebody, like I was talking to somebody yesterday about sleep training, where babies are just left for hours to cry. What they're being taught is that they cannot be authentic and have a relationship. It's like they have to stop crying before they get any relationship. And so that level of not being able to be authentic and attach, where we're put in a position where we have to choose between being authentic or having a relationship with somebody, that's the core of what you're talking about.
Mm.
And that happens really early on.
And I'm guessing you've done this so long and you've developed this understanding of the human condition, and you've developed that this is at the base of so many things that you see it clearly now, right? It's just like you don't even have to, you just like, yep, that's it. How in that case, because it feels so early and ingrained, what's the prognosis for coming out on the other side of that, of later in life, changing that?
Well, the prognosis under the right circumstances is very high.
Oh, okay, good, great.
It's like really high.
Okay.
And so, gosh, that's a great question. We haven't talked about this, at least in my memory, on this show. Is we are designed to attach, and we are designed to be authentic. That's how we're designed. Regardless of anybody's belief about how we got here. I'm not talking about, just so everybody knows that. I mean, if someone is a creationist, we're still designed that way. If somebody's an evolutionist, we're designed that way. If someone's in between there, we're designed that way. I don't know quite how we got here, but that is how we're designed. When given a chance, we will work toward that. When given a chance in a relationship, we will work toward that kind of a health. Sometimes it takes a long process to get there. Sometimes it takes maybe a couple, 3 years, sometimes even longer worth of work to get ourselves all the way there. And we will get there. So let me talk about that a little bit. So what we're talking about is authenticity and attachment. When everything is perfect in our conception, and when I say perfect, I mean good, not 100% perfect. Nothing's 100% perfect. But our conception, our time in utero, and the first 2 to 3 years of life, if that's really good, it takes us that long to really learn to become authentic and attach. So we're talking 9 months plus maybe 3 years. So we're really talking about a 4-year period of learning how to do that well when things go well. So now let's fast forward to someone who's, say, 37, and they have discovered that things just were not good early on. And they said, well, I've been working at this for 6 months. I've been seeing a therapist once a week for 6 months. And it's like, okay, so once a week for 6 months is 4 times 6, 24. So you have 24 hours of having worked on this.
Mm,
So you worked on it one day.
mm, mm,
Where if you go back,
mm,
when things are good, we need 4 years to do it.
mm.
And that's where people get themselves tripped up. Now we do a lot of work in between sessions, or with, if we're in really good, solid relationships. Part of what happens in the nation is that we get, if we really allow ourselves to access the support, we can get that a lot. It's not just a 1 hour a week kind of thing. But where people get themselves tripped up is they go, oh, well, I've been working at this. I've been seeing a therapist and going to initiations for 2.5 or 3 years, and I'm not there yet. And it's like, well, you wouldn't be there either if you were a little kid.
Patience, grasshopper.
Yeah.
You mentioned something that connected a dot for me, and I'm curious. You said, so we've established that it takes about 3 years. Okay, so that's, and that, that young person growing into that 3-year-old, that's full time they're working on. That's happening all the time. Yet, and so park that for just a second. Like, that feels very formative. Like, that's very critical that those things are going right for them to develop healthy understandings of what it's like to be vulnerable, what it's like to trust, all of that. Yet I think and I do have someone can Google this, the percentage of relationships that fail within under 3 years of having a child enter the relationship. So people are going great.
Ooh.
They have a kid, and then bam, then it blows up. So not only does it blow up for the couple, they're gone, but the collateral damage on the child, disrupting that first 3 years of this really important growth that has to happen, fucks that up for a generation. Did I connect that dot right, Doc?
Yeah, you did. And I actually had not quite thought about it that way. That's a really good. I mean, once we get off this call, I will Google. And yes,
I'm thinking of myself. My dad left when I was 2.
exactly. So do you have a sense of how that
Oh,
affected
yeah,
you?
I had to deal with this about 15 years ago. Had a ton of it,
Yeah.
and yes,
Yeah.
and did spend quite a bit of time figuring it out and working on it, and I can faithfully say that's largely gone. And if it does come up a little, I'll go, nope, I'm good with that. I don't need to listen to that story is gone. We fixed that, worked on
Right.
it.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
so
But I wonder how many people don't have that opportunity that I had.
I'm going to guess at some place, and this is purely gut, somewhere between 60 and 80% of the population has issues around attachment.
Yeah.
And they can be on a continuum, because and here's what's an interesting piece, I think, that really happens, and it's actually, for me, it's heartbreaking. Say 2 people are 22 and 24, just random numbers. They have a baby. That baby is born, and parents maybe even wanted that baby. Maybe that baby was planned. the problem, one or both of the parents have some major attachment issues for whatever reason. When that baby reaches a place, let's say a year to year and a half old, when that baby is becoming more demanding to, because they're crying and they're beginning to crawl and they're beginning to talk and all of those things, what that does is that triggers the attachment issues that the parents have. And
at a very deep level, I'm guessing.
At a very deep level, at that level that we started talking a half an hour ago, we were talking about, like in our guts, it's like where people just go, I can't deal with this. I can't handle this. And that oftentimes will trigger strife in the relationship, and oftentimes will trigger that relationship breaking up. One of the main things that happens, and this is a really big deal, is mom and baby attach, and dad gets left out. And if dad has attachment issues, he's going, where do I fit in? Because he got together with this woman to try to attach, to try to be close, to try to connect. And then it's like, then he gets left out, and it's like he's going, where do I fit? We're not having sex anymore. We're up all night. I'm not getting my needs met. Now, if someone's really fully attached, both parents are pretty solid in their attachment, they work that out. Because moms feels there's a similar kind of thing that goes on with moms. But if they're not pretty solidly attached, then that blows their relationship apart. And they don't even know why. They just think the other person doesn't love them anymore, or they're not getting their needs met, or
you had said, and I didn't write it down, and my memory is only as long as my pencil, that we're looking for two things. One is attachment and
authenticity.
Thank you.
And what we're trying to get is attachment and authenticity.
Right.
What oftentimes happens is we have to give up one to have the other, which is,
so I want to,
means there's no solid foundation of a relationship.
Earlier this week, you and I were talking about this big idea, and again, we've just kind of proven the original premise that there are foundational things in the human condition that color everything else. And we've just established that in this first 3 years, these two pieces, authenticity and attachment, are developed in us, and those are requisite for every relationship we have in our life for the rest of our lives. And if that is interrupted, disrupted in that first 3 years, that is going to cause problems down the road. Fact. Okay. That being said, so that's why it's so important to understand this, right? It's just vital. Again, your life's work. So in a situation, and we talked about coming into a new relationship or even an existing relationship where we're neutral and we build trust. And we've talked over time that trust gets built it continues to be built and let's say solidified. Let's say that my trust is I have high trust, right? And I can be truthful, authentic with you. And I feel very attached in our relationship. Both of those are pegged. They get stronger over time because we keep adding more reasons to trust, more reasons to feel like it's okay. I can say anything. I can get to the deepest levels. That just continues to get built, whether it's thicker or taller, however you want to think about that. In
all
my
of the
brain,
above.
it's a wall, so that when something does happen that damages that, you fuck up because we're human, right? You tell a lie, or you are untruthful in some, you're deceptive in some manner. That is going to cause a break in that trust. And it, depending on how thick and how deep the trust is, depends on whether it's gone forever or it takes a while to build back up. I have specific examples in my life where that's happened. And thankfully, my deposits in the trust bank were sufficient to cover the loss of goodwill, right?
Mm-hmm.
The loss of goodwill as a result of some stupid ass thing that I did. Did I get all that right, Doc?
Yeah, yeah.
That was more of a speech than a question. Sorry.
Well, no, I think that you're really onto something here because, and sort of the way that I look at this is, I think what you're talking about is, can we have sort of chinks in the armor, so to speak,
Sure.
and still
Sure,
be
sure.
okay?
Sure.
And the answer is yes. And the answer is yes, we can. And this is a little bit different way to look at this, but every relationship that we have has a contract, whether it's a spoken or unspoken one. The more spoken that can be, the more authentic we can be, the deeper and more solid the contract is. We will make mistakes. I mean, that's just all there is to
Straight
it.
up.
We will blow it. We will forget an appointment. We will say one thing and like 2 days later, we'll say something that totally contradicts it. I mean, it's called being weirdly human. And we'll forget shit. We'll go, oh, fuck, I suppose, that stuff. The way that I look at it is that there are some things that sort of blow, if I use the metaphor of a house, there's some things that would like blow out the foundation. And those things, that's really hard to recover from. There are some things where it's like you throw a rock and you bust a window, and it's like, okay, the house is still intact, but we got to fix the window. And and a lot of it has to do with how we fix or how we come back. And again, this is where authenticity comes in, is if we are authentically sorrow, if we feel sorrow, if we work authentically to repair, if we work authentically to be honest, and
that's noticed by the other person.
Yeah, we then that authenticity recreates whatever chink there was in the armor, recreates the attachment. If we are not authentic, then things become very difficult to repair. And I've talked about this before. If, let's say, I forget something, I'm trying to think of an example. But let's say that I forget a call and go, oh, today's Friday, we don't have a call. And then, you're texting me and on my time, it's 8:20 and I go, oh, fuck, am I supposed to be on this call? If I go, oh, sorry, and there's no authenticity behind it, it's like that doesn't repair stuff. If I go, okay, Mark, I'm really sorry. I blew this. My bad. Will you forgive me for fucking up? What can we do to put this back together? That will take 30 seconds and then we'll be done.
Right.
If I'm going, oh, sorry, too bad. Because we're not being fully authentic, but we're not really attaching. We're not getting how, because part of attachment has to do with knowing how I've affected the other person.
Right. Right.
It's like, yeah, I just messed up your morning, brother, and I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
And when that happens, you'll go, no big deal. I got to feed the birds extra. But if I go, oh, I'm sorry, too bad. And then it doesn't allow you to drop in or me to drop into the relational attachment. So both of those have to go together.
And I'm thinking of the feeling you have when the apology is accepted.
Mm-hmm.
You like with me, I would think, okay, how can what can I do to make sure I don't forget appointments?
Yes.
Right. And then I've learned to set reminders, right? I've learned to do the kinds of things that I remember I slept through a Elders Live once, and Trevor called me at 5:07 and said, "You okay?" Right. And that wasn't, "Hey, where the fuck are you?" It's like, "Are you okay?"
Right. Which is and just so that you know, I had totally forgot about that right now. But this is a great example. Traver calling, going, "Hey, brother, you okay?" is different than like, "What the fuck happened?"
Right.
Because Traver, because he trusts you, he knows that you show up. And it's like the underlying assumption is if you didn't show up, it's because something went wrong, not because you blew someone off.
Yeah.
And then you were, I mean, now that I think back on that, it was like, I think you were on in like 2 or 3 minutes. I don't know how you got up that fast, but you did.
I've been late before in high stakes situations and learned to boot my operating system extremely fast.
Exactly. Yeah, but you see that even that creates authenticity and creates attachment. It's like, oh wow, I fucked this up. I need to boot up here really quick. I need and also I had forgotten about that. And that's what happens. This is the other key to this. When we have made mistakes and we have cleaned them up, we actually forget about it.
Right. We don't hold on to that memory. God, I remember that time you fucked up.
Yeah. It's like, okay, we're good. And you don't, and there's like no holding on to that on any level. It's like, okay, so
interesting. So with attachment is holding on. So when the attachment is strong, it's easy to let go.
Yeah. Yeah. And attachment is, it's interesting. That's a good piece because here, I mean, the other piece, I mean, this is interesting to talk about and you bringing it up, is the attachment we're talking about is a different process than in certain spiritual traditions where we talk about non-attachment, where we're not holding on to stuff. And what's interesting to me is that if we have that attachment and that foundation, because that's the way I look at the early bonding between parents and babies, is that allows us to let go. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. There are so many instances of attachment and gravity.
Yes.
Right. Yes. Feeling grounded. Right. Yes. There's all these words that go towards talking about that feeling that we
Well,
have, where if I feel safe, like I'm grounded, I'm good. I know I'm
Mhm.
solid, right? All of those kinds of words are all speaking towards us, sending signals back to the body. Yep, I'm
Yeah,
good.
I'm good.
Yeah, I got this.
Yeah, and that's that anticipatory safety that I was talking about.
See,
It's like, I know I will be safe with you.
I love how you just pulled it all the way around, wrapped it up, Doc. This is, you know what? Today is the end of our 91st show. So we are on the road, officially now on the road to 100.
That's crazy.
Right? Think about that, right?
That
We've been so, but 100 is only 5 days. I love you, my friend.
I love you too. And I love doing this with you. So thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.